everybody, my name is Yunjin Moon and welcome to iHome Church. This Sunday, I would like to talk about the word failure. And I think it's an important word to talk about because in a religious community and in a life of faith, it's a word that sends chills up and down our spine. And certainly when we have been the recipient of the word failure with the finger pointing attached to it, I'm sure many of us have felt at times lost and hopeless and wondering whether we could go on. But I would like to encourage brothers and sisters all around the world that in order for us to be an effective family, having really incredible relationships with everybody that we care about, especially our intimate relationships with our spouses, with our children, with our extended family, and of course with the larger community like a church or our society, we have to have an understanding of this word in more of a different way than the way that we have been accustomed to thinking about it. And I would like to encourage everybody to kind of take another look at the word and encourage everybody to develop a healthy relationship with this word, because many times the word failure can seem like almost like a judgment call, a condemnation. But in many instances, it can be the very thing or the catalyst that really compels us to move forward or gives us the courage to change our lives or really take the reins of the horns of destiny and really make our life worthwhile and really ours. And in doing so, be that eternal son and a daughter of God that we were all meant to be. And for me, when I think about this word and when I really meditate and pray about it, this really cute story comes to mind, and I'm sure you're all aware of it. It's really a wonderful tale about a competition, and a healthy competition at that, hopefully, between a rabbit and a turtle. And so this turtle and a rabbit gets together and decides to compete each other for this race, and they're going to run and race a certain mile-long distance, and whoever gets to the finish line wins the race. And so the rabbit and the turtle, gets ready on that beginning line, and they prepare themselves and off they go. And most of us know the story. We know that the rabbit, who is terribly fast and terribly quick, hops his way, but then looks back at the turtle, who is just moseying along steadfast in his own way and in his own pace, and probably looks back at the turtle and laughs at him for being so slow and decides to take a little nap, thinking that he has all this time in the world before he wins the race. So he kind of takes himself out of the race. But the turtle, even though he has a really, really slow start, he just continues on and in the end ends up winning the race. And so it's a wonderful, simple tale about, the importance of not being so arrogant about one's abilities, like the way the rabbit was already celebrating his impending victory before the race is even completed. And we realize that our own understanding of turtle being slow and just the kind of a creature that could never really outrun a rabbit. In our minds, we've already predestined it for failure. But again, it's a story about how slow and steady wins the race. And so it's not really the inborn talent or the abilities that the rabbit has that is going to ensure he's going to win, but it's the inner character or the makeup of the turtle that will just consistently and persevere, slow and steady, until he finishes the victory line or the finish line. And so, I, having 6 kids of my own, have shared this story with my sons and my daughter, and I enjoy reading it time and time again. But what is really fascinating to me about this story is really kind of looking in to the mindset of the winner, and this winner in particular happens to be a turtle. Obviously, this turtle knows that the rabbit is faster. The rabbit has inborn natural talents that are far surpassing the turtle's own talents. There is just no way that the turtle can defeat the rabbit's speed. And the turtle is well aware that, the rabbit can hop and jump and take long strides, and he just doesn't have that inborn ability. But what is it about the turtle, knowing that somebody here that is called his competitor, has this great ability and probably can outrun him any day, and probably, maybe this rabbit had competitions with other turtles in this turtle's family, and he's seen all the turtles fail compared to this rabbit. So, how does this turtle really handle or deal in his mind? And really prepare him for the race, because he is going to run the race because he wants to win. He ultimately wants to win. But what kind of a mindset do you have to be when you're up against something that is a proven winner, something that is well known to have these incredible abilities, and and what about how do you as a turtle deal with the possibility of you failing in the middle of the race, the embarrassment of it all? Are you going to be defeated by this, almost like this self-fulfilling prophecy that you cannot beat this rabbit? Well, the interesting thing about this turtle in the story is that he has a very, very clear mindset in preparation for this rabbit, or he must have. Because in a way, he is not deciding to win the race because he is fighting with this demon, or this demon of a word called failure, written all over it. Any onlookers looking at these 2 likely candidates are going to say, when they look at the turtle, he's going to fail. There's just no way he's going to beat the rabbit. That's a recipe for failure. And I'm sure the turtle is well aware of it. But in his mind, what is the turtle doing in preparation for the race? Well, I think he's doing a couple of things. Number 1, he is not afraid of the fear of failure. He wants to win the race to the best of his own abilities. And he will be satisfied having done his best. In other words, it's not the performance, but it's the effort that he will assess at the end of the day as to whether he failed or not. So the fear of the race being beaten by the much faster rabbit does not impede this turtle from entering the race. And number 2, this turtle doesn't allow past failures of other turtles to define who he is as this turtle who is going to win this race. Regardless of what other failures took place in his family of other turtles or even in his own life, past failures is not going to define who he is and what he is capable of doing in the present and in the future. It's marvelous. And the third important thing that this mind of this turtle has is that he recognizes that in many instances, failure is a learned behavior. in that we kind of train ourselves by not understanding how to digest the mistakes of the past or the failures of the past in the healthiest of ways. So we are actually teaching ourselves that we are programming ourselves to fail. We tell ourselves there's just no way we can overcome this or we can win this because of our past failures. And in a way, it's kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecies. We've already lost. We've already failed even before we have begun, because we tell ourselves this is what we have learned, and this is how our behavior is behaving, and because in the past our failures led to certain behaviors. And number 4, this turtle is not deterred by fixed mindsets that perhaps other turtles might have had about their abilities vis-a-vis the turtle. Regardless of what failures or mistakes have taken place, this turtle is going to find a way to overcome it and become successful. And so this is an incredible tale if you think about it. And you think, what would it take somebody like that turtle to really step up? I mean, what would it take for us if we decided to compete in a battle where the inborn and natural talents of the other far surpasses us? How do we deal with our own fears of failures? And how do we process this word failure? And how do we work with it? And not against it, so that we can actually become victorious in the end. And one of the things that I am reminded when I'm kind of looking at this word face to face, the word failure, is that many times in life, especially in a religious life, we understand the importance of being compassionate to others. We know how to really go out of ourselves and try to learn how to live for the sake of others, try to be empathetic towards others, try to practice forgiveness when it concerns the others. But sometimes we're not very good at kind of practicing that same kind of compassion that we would like to exercise to others towards ourselves. Sometimes we are our worst critics. We are our worst obstacles. And we are the ones that actually make us believe that we cannot overcome any kind of mistakes and failures. We are our own worst enemies. And we realize that just as important as it is to really learn how to be compassionate towards others, we can only really truly do so when we can learn how to be compassionate towards ourselves. And we learn how to be compassionate towards ourselves when we understand that everybody, including you and me, yes, including you and me, have shortcomings. We have our strengths and weaknesses. And, all of us in different areas or different regards or different levels have shortcomings that we have to work on. And we realize that whenever we deal with failures or mistakes or difficulties in our life, failure doesn't mean a decrease in the worth of who we are. Because when we understand that we are God's eternal sons and daughters, we realize that our worth is eternal, because God's love towards his children, you and me, is eternal. But when we fail at things, and especially in the context of really meaningful relationships or intimate, important relationships, or in the context of a religious life, we feel this incredible sense of decrease in our worth, like we're just worthless, we're just not good enough, that there is really no need for us to continue living on because we're just a failure, we're just a mistake. But this is the time when God is there saying, do not forget, child, that you are my eternal son and a daughter. And one of our greatest responsibility in the life of a believer is to be that compassionate individual, not only compassionate to the world, but we need to be compassionate to ourselves. In a way, we need to learn how to forgive ourselves, how to forgive our shortcomings, how to understand our shortcomings, how to forgive and let it be, and let things lie in the past that needs to lie in the past and move on towards the present and work on the present so that we can have an incredible future. And one of the things that I find incredibly interesting, when you're talking about the word failure, I mean, when we've failed at something, there is nothing more demoralizing than that. Our self-motivation goes out the window, and our understanding of ourselves just drops precipitously, almost as if we jumped off the fjord. And everything looks black and white, and everything looks like there's just no way out of this failure or this mistake. But there's this incredible study that was done on self-motivation and the importance of self-motivation. And it was a study done in 1998 by the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology. And what this study did was basically took a group of fifth graders and put them into two different groups. And one group was highly praised for their intelligence, and the other group was highly praised for their effort. So the group that was highly praised for their intelligence, meaning their inborn or natural talents, the interesting thing about this group is that when they were given a choice as to do you want to look at kids who performed better than you or kids who performed worse than you, the kids in the group that was praised for inborn and natural talent or their intelligence that they were born with, they wanted to look at the lower scores, the kids who did worse than them, so that they could bolster up their self-esteem. Whereas when you looked at the group that was praised not for their inborn, natural, God-given talents, but the group that was praised for their effort in really putting in the hard work to bring about the kind of incredible results or victories, this group, interestingly, wanted to look at kids who scored much higher than them because they wanted to learn from the kids who did better and look at their mistakes so that they don't repeat the same mistakes of people who perform better than they did, and so that they can learn how to be better. So it's an incredible study because it shows that when it comes to self-motivation and when it comes to really learning how to have a healthy relationship with failure, it's really important to not understand our failures or our mistake in life as somehow lacking in terms of our ability, or somehow God making us or pre-programming us to fail. Why would our Heavenly Parent up in heaven pre-program His children to fail? That is not the God of love that we're talking about. But when we look at ourselves in that way, then what we end up doing is just wanting to always be successful for all the wrong reasons, for bolstering up our own self-esteem. But when we understand failures as something, as what C.S. Lewis calls, one fails forward towards success, and that sometimes mistakes and failures are the very thing that can lead you towards success, then we realize that it's not what we were born with, or it's not the talents that's going to define whether we are going to be successful in life or not, but it's our effort that will determine whether we will be successful or not. And so then we realize that, when we've made mistakes before, when we have this fear of failure, when we are afraid to be defined as a failure of who we are, when we feel like a failure is just a part of our lives because we just cannot help doing it because it's part of our learned behavior, or when we see failure as a fixed mindset, we realize that there are actually a couple things that can help us overcome and rise above our failure and actually use our mistakes and failure as a springboard to achieve incredible successes in life and incredible prosperity in life. And we realize that there are, again, simple 3 steps that can really help you and me become that incredibly successful men and women of God. Number 1 is understanding that every failure and every mistake can be overcome with intentional practice. And I use the word intentional in that it is our decision. We are doing it deliberately. We are practicing deliberately. Because practicing and working hard can overcome any lack of talent or ability that we think that we were not given. And there have been studies done that clearly shows that sheer hard work and effort over 10 years will surpass any natural talent. And add another 10 years on top of that, you can be world class, even if you weren't gifted with that certain talent or ability that we initially thought we needed to become great. In other words, through our efforts and through our hard work, we can overcome or even surpass the natural abilities that we think that we do not have. And we realize that when we study successful people, it is not the most intelligent or the ones with the highest IQ that tends to be successful. But what successful people have all in common across the board, regardless of what they are doing, is their passion, meaning their dedication, their devotion to what they want to accomplish. It is not inborn talent, but it's their sheer hard work. You know, it's like 1% inspiration, 99% perspiration. It's that willingness to work because they're absolutely passionate about it. They're absolutely passionate about learning how to be that compassionate person or learning how to be that loving person. I've heard many young men and women say, well, I'm just not as loving as he or she is. That's just the way I am. But no. With devotion, and if we're passionate about becoming that true men and women of God, we can absolutely become that Mother Teresa or that Reverend Sun Myung Moon or that Mahatma Gandhi or Dr. Martin Luther King or any of these people that we really look up to because they have overcome failures upon failures and difficulties and trials and tribulations to develop the kind of heart that never gives up and overcomes their failures to become somebody incredible. And that's the amazing thing about my father, the Reverend Sun Myung Moon. This man has gone through insurmountable odds. He has faced insurmountable odds. He has been thrown in prison 6 times throughout his life. But what does he do? Most people, if they were thrown in prison, they might get disillusioned. They might think of themselves as a failure and give up on life. But every time he comes out, he grows stronger. He works harder. And even if they throw him again the second time, he comes up stronger and more determined. And even the last incarceration that he had to undergo at Danbury Prison, he came out stronger for it. He used that opportunity to really rally religious leaders all around the country and all around the world to really fight on behalf of religious freedom, and he came out stronger. And that is really the mark of a winner. It's not what you were born with or what we perceive that we were born with or what we were not born with, but that sheer passion, that willingness to really devote and be consistent and steadfast in our efforts to become the kind of men and women we want to be. And we realize that the third component to really becoming somebody who can overcome this failure is understanding the importance of the word perseverance. We realize that we can overcome any learned disability, regardless of whether our parents told us you're no good, or you cannot do this, you're just not made for that, you need to do something else. If we feel passionate and if we dedicate our efforts, if we're devoted to it, and we practice what we need to practice to get to the finish line intentionally, deliberately, then we can accomplish anything we want as long as we decide to persevere. Don't give up. I think many of us learn how to give up because in life, maybe we've had wonderful people who meant well, but they don't allow us the space to make our own mistakes and really learn in the process and really learn how to lift ourselves up again with our sheer effort. Many times I've seen mothers and fathers bending over backwards to make their children's life easier. And they do it out of love. But if you don't allow the child the space to grow and learn how to build his own Lego model, and even if he fails 5, 6, 7 times, we have to be there in a supportive environment, but let them fail nonetheless. So they figure out on their own how to build that Lego set. And likewise, life is the same thing. We have to learn how to make our own mistakes, but at the same time, learn how to work ourselves out of our mistakes. And the most important thing that we can do as parents is to give our children the praise for the effort. In other words, to really praise them for their effort, regardless of how well they're doing or how well they are not doing. When we see a certain investment or an effort, then we can applaud them along the way and encourage them not to rest on the laurels of their inborn abilities or their inborn talents, and so that they can learn how to tackle difficulties in their life or mistakes or failures with great aplomb and continue on to become incredible men and women of God. So instead of seeing failures as something so negative all the time, we have to understand that if we want to turn mistakes and failures around, we need to kind of start looking at it in a different way. Sometimes failures and mistakes can be the very fertilizer that is needed to create a success. And instead of thinking that, oh my goodness, they have failed and therefore they are petrified in their own failure forever, we have to help our loved ones and ourselves see that sometimes our failures or our failings can be our own savior. Our failures can be our savior if we realize that it can be the very catalyst that turns our life around. And then we begin to understand, maybe hopefully by going through life with a grateful heart, and even if we face mistakes and failures, not become bitter and angry, but understand it as part of the journey. And I think that's incredibly important in a life of faith, because when we can see failures and mistakes, which you and I will all make, there is just no way that you and I will go through life with no mistakes and no failures and no obstacles that we've had to deal with on our journey towards becoming incredible men and women of God. We can be certain of two things. There will always be change and there will always be failures. But what determines the difference between a loser and a winner is really understanding this word failure in a different light. Instead of understanding it as something that petrifies you in the past, that's something that you can never break out of, see it as, number one, the other part in a journey towards success. And number two, understand the word failure as an incredible learning opportunity. What can we learn from our mistakes and our failures so that we can have a better present and a better future? Number three, failures or sometimes mistakes are a reminder to us or a sign that we are challenging ourselves in our lives to attempt to do better or attempt to try something new. And we should kind of encourage ourselves, motivate ourselves to continue onwards. Because instead of just being fixated in our own little square way of thinking, we should always learn how to think beyond and look above our box to really try to see if we can challenge ourselves in ways that we've never done before. And number 4, failures show us clearly what we cannot do or what does not work. And therefore, it kind of helps us to overcome our own impediments by really compelling us to explore all the other skills or other opportunities or different approaches or strategies that perhaps we did not apply or we did not think about in our lives. So we can use the mistakes and the failures as an incredible sounding board towards future success and really creating the kind of life that you and I all want. We all want to be that incredible son and a daughter of God. So in the context of a religious community, what is the most important thing that we need to do towards each other? Well, we need to be compassionate. And we need to understand that whatever each other individuals are dealing with, we are there to support, to uplift, and to edify with love. And that's what being a compassionate society is all about. But at the same time, we also need to practice self-compassion. In other words, really allowing ourselves to not just be petrified by the fear of failure, not just be defined by past failures, not thinking that because we have failed and we tend to kind of habitualize a certain behavior when it concerns a certain trigger, doesn't mean that we're going to be caught in that vicious cycle forever. We can learn our way out of the failed behaviors that we have had to deal with in the past. And we can really rise above our fixed mindsets of our own understanding of our abilities or what we're born with, because we have infinite potential. We have infinite creativity. We only have to believe, and we only have to be willing to put in the effort to practice, deliberately practice, intentionally practice. We have to be passionate in terms of our devotion to what we want to create in our lives. And we also have to be willing to persevere, to relearn all those failure behavior into successful behavior. And in that way, become an incredible men and women of God, become an incredible family, become an incredible society, become an incredible community of believers. So I really believe, in my deepest heart of hearts, that what Father is really teaching, really practicing this principle of living for the sake of others is really the key to the world. But when we attempt to learn to forgive and to embrace and empathize and be compassionate towards others, it starts with you and me. And we need to learn and decide to do that for ourselves. We need to learn how to be compassionate towards ourselves and be our own self-motivator and really applaud and concentrate on our efforts and not on what we were born with or what we were not born with. And that's the great thing about that tale of the turtle and the rabbit, because when you kind of ask yourself, what must have been the mindset of that turtle? It's like, against all odds, he is going to fight this race and he is ultimately going to win this race. What is that mindset of a winner? And you realize that the mindset of a winner comes from understanding or having a healthy relationship with this fear of failure or the word failure in general. And so when we start with our self-compassion, start with our own forgiveness and really understanding that, we all have shortcomings, but they can all be overcome. and not allow that past failures to dictate our own worth or lack thereof, then we realize we're onto something. And all we need to do is to extend that compassion to the rest of the world. And our father, Reverend Sam Myung Moon, shared this beautiful quote with us in December 27, 2002. He's giving us incredible hope because he is saying that the blind age of selfish life will pass away, and we will build an altruistic world of interdependence, mutual prosperity, and universally shared values. When we can come to understand our own shortcomings, when we understand that we all have strength and weaknesses, but it's in working together that we can work towards our mutual prosperity. It's in working together as that incredible humanity of shared values that can create a peaceful world. That is what is going to change the world. So brothers and sisters, I've realized on my journey, this year I'm going to be 50 years old, and I realized that life is not just about learning how to work with incredible successes in your and my life or in our life, but it's also about learning how to work through the failures and becoming an incredible man and a woman of God. So nowadays when I hear different people, saying things like, oh, so-and-so has failed, but so-and-so, I would encourage and invite all of you to re-examine that word failure. And when we look at the history of our own church, yes, a lot of failures have been made along with incredible victories. And we need to celebrate both. And we need to have a healthy understanding of both. Just because we've made mistakes in the past, just because we've failed in the past, doesn't mean that our worth as sons and daughters, eternal sons and daughters, goes out the door. And in particular, in regard to our beautiful true parents, they are the ones who really brought us home in terms of having that incredible relationship with God, our Heavenly Parent. Without our true parents, there is no blessing. And without the blessing, there is no owning our lineage as really part of God's family. And so, many people have said, well, true parents this, true parents that, they failed doing this, they failed in that. But we have to have a healthy understanding of the word failure and understand that, yes, in any institution, in any community, you have the good and the bad. You have the shortcomings and you have the victories. You've had mistakes and you've had incredible victories. But the most important thing is to move forward. One fails forward towards success, says C.S. Lewis. We need to move forward with this incredible power of true love by not condemning, or not finger pointing, and not just pointing at the negative things that have been done in the past, but continually self-motivate ourselves and be inspired individuals, because we've got incredible work to do, and that is to build a world of peace. And it can only start when we can have a grateful attitude and a loving attitude towards our fellow men and women, and with a sincere desire to leave the world better than we found it. And if we can concentrate on the things that make us a family, then we can do incredible things. So brothers and sisters, have an incredible week and a wonderful weekend. Thank you and God bless. If you have any questions and comments, please leave them below the video or go to injunmoon.com and use the contact form. And don't forget to subscribe to our email list. And for those of you who want to contribute to our work here at iHome Church, just click on the donate button. Thank you.